Welcome to Be Happy, Feel Great. We bring in guests that make you feel happy. And today I'm very happy myself to bring in our guest, Joe Finora, who is the author of a best-selling book out on the North Fork, Red Like Wine, The North Fork Harbor Murders. And Joe, I'm really excited that you're here, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here.
And congratulations. You know, you really have a great book out. It's getting a lot of hype all around the North and South Fork. I know a lot of people that have been talking about it. I've seen articles in the paper with you, and you must be so excited to have finished it.
The book has been one great experience. I was very happy to have finished it. It took me about 3 years.
3 years, wow.
Mostly working early in the morning, anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes. Writing a book in that process is almost like being on a diet or going to the gym. You got to get up early, and you've got to be disciplined. And there were some days I'd have very productive days. I'd knock out maybe 3 good pages, and there'd be other days where it was like Death Valley. You'd type out a few lines, a couple of paragraphs, and you think, boy, how did I ever get myself into this?
Yeah, you get that writer's block, I guess, certain
yeah, but
days,
it's like going to the gym. You just keep going, and it becomes
it.
methodical, and you just keep figuring your way out of the jams.
Yeah. I have talked to quite a few authors, and I heard different ways or different styles of writing books, and a lot of them do it early in the morning before the kids wake up and the day starts. Others do it late at night, you know, they just have their own time.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with me. That was like part of the discovery process. I started doing it late at night. I'm self-employed. I'm a professional writer. I've never had writer's block because I've always had to pay the rent by writing, so that eliminates any writer's block.
Okay.
So I started writing the book in the evenings, but I found I was too tired, so I started I discovered I was at my best after I'd been up for about half an hour. Then I'm able to hit the keyboard pretty effectively.
Okay, great,
And that's how I knocked out a good 3/4 of the book.
But it took 3 years.
It took about 3 years,
3
yeah.
years, because a lot of people don't realize how long it takes to write books sometimes.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like going on a diet. It's a commitment. If you want it to work, you've got to commit.
You got to commit to it.
Yeah.
And I heard different authors say, writing a book, if you do a page a day, by the end of the year, you'll have 300 pages.
Oh, page a day is good, yeah.
Yeah, or a chapter a week, if depending on how short, or but everybody has their own goal, I guess, that they're trying to achieve when they're writing. Or I guess if you're in the zone, you just flow with it.
I
right?
was just going to say that. It's almost like a musician when he gets caught up in the rhythm. It kind of becomes almost improvisational. One thing just falls very naturally after the next, and those are great days.
Oh yeah,
those are great days. And some days you're asking yourself, you're typing in what happens next, and what is this character going to do, and what's that character going to do, and sometimes it's like you're staring into the black hole. But other times it just comes so naturally, so easily, and it just flows right out. And at the end of the session, you look back and say, "Wow, that really worked." I could go a few more days this week.
Yeah.
I could actually finish this thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. I started reading your book a few days ago. I'm up to the first murder.
Okay.
Okay, and the title, of course, is Murderers. So I assume that there's going to be more than one.
You got your money's worth. There's 4 murders.
4? Okay.
4 murders. Yeah, we give plenty of death. No shortage of death in the book. The means of murder is the lethal injection, which is illustrated on the cover there with the syringe with a drop of blood. One of the things I learned in the course of my research was that before the proliferation of the handgun, the #1 murder method was poison. The #1 poison was arsenic. And in my research, I learned that the French do not refer to arsenic the way we do. They call it powder of succession, because it was used hundreds of years ago for people to get their relatives out of the way so they can get to their inheritances.
Oh, boy. Must have been interesting research and everything.
You
for your
got to
book,
be
too.
careful what you ate and drank, yeah.
Yeah, wow, scary.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
could
you
be.
want all
Yeah.
the relatives to like you, I
Yeah,
guess,
you
and
could do
everything,
be, otherwise
too,
you
and
you get used to
not-
sleeping with one eye open, yeah.
Not let them know how much money you have saved up either.
Well, the book isn't selling that well. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's moving along now. The book is kind of developing like a little bit of a cultish following in South Holden and North Fork. People are approaching me. They're not shy. People I don't even know come up to me and say, I know who you wrote about so-and-so. I know the guy in the hotel. That's Mr. So-and-so, or the cab driver. That's Mr. So-and-so, isn't it? Oh, no, it never is. But their imaginations are sort of taking hold.
I'm doing the same thing. I'm reading it. I live on the North Fork, and I imagine, okay, it must be taking place here. This is the winery. This might be the winemaker that, and the different characters that are there. I feel like I'm reading a sequel right now to Plum Island.
Oh, well.
You really, I
don't
really
know
want to
about that.
compliment you.
I don't know about that, but-
It's a great read so far, and I know I always enjoyed when Nelson DeMille wrote Plum Island, that he had different places on the North Fork, and I'm reading it, and I feel the same way, so, and that's a compliment. You really...
Oh, I understand.
It's well-written, and I'm enjoying the way it flows.
Yeah, the thing is, the North Fork is such a fertile community in more ways, in every sense of the word. I mean, in addition to the farming and the fishing, it's a community in transition. And agritourism has become a very big, vibrant business out there. And the reason we have tourism is because we have the farms and we have the wineries. But at the same time, when I mean it's a community in transition, there is more and more people now being involved in the tourism business in different degrees than in the traditional businesses. I mean, the wineries alone in the North Fork, there's about 40 wineries now. They employ about 1,000 people. So the community is transitioning. And it's like any other transition. It's a little painful, and it's got its good points, and it's got its negative ones.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a great place. I know that you've been coming out to the North Fork like I have for many years.
Right.
And it's great that you thought of, this plot and everything, and are, mainly, I'd say, from what I read, 90% of it seems to be on the North Fork.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, maybe you could just tell our viewers a little bit more about the book and, give us a little overview of
absolutely.
it.
Well, we have the fictitious village, North Fork Harbor, and that was a little bit of a problem for me. I started the book, and I didn't have a name for the town. So I came up with North Fork Harbor, which is basically a mix of all the towns from Laurel, which is my town, to Greenport, and we also have a few escapades on Shelter Island. But those towns are not mentioned by name. They're part of what I've created as North Fork Harbor. And the same thing with most of the characters. They're not anyone in particular, no particular individual. What they are is sort of a blend of the different characters, and I broke them down into different groups. We have our North Fork regulars, we have the outsiders, mostly coming from the city. A couple of transplants who came from the city and now live in North Fork, kind of like myself, and then a few other incidental characters along the way. And I had to do a lot of police investigation type learning, in addition to learning about agricultural poisons. And a lot of the things I thought I knew enough about on North Fork, in many cases I didn't. And I had to go back and do a lot of research and find out different things about just about anything you can imagine, why a certain road went a certain way, or when the ferries leave, when the first winery opened, etc. I had to find I thought I knew enough about it, but as I started writing, you're digging deeper and deeper.
And once you're writing, you got to get all the details
It's
correct.
one thing leads to
and
another.
One could
Yeah.
hold you up a little bit there also.
Yeah, it's always one thing leading to another. You're constantly
right,
asking
right.
yourself, well, what if? Or what's next? What am I going to do next? What happens next? And you don't want to, close your chapter and make the reader feel so satisfied to the point where he doesn't really want to read anymore. You want to close your chapter and leave your door open a little bit so that they do want to turn the page and say, oh, now what's going to happen?
Right, right. And I'm sure that with that, you mentioned how you see different people and, they're giving you ideas for the next book and thinking about, or asking you questions like that.
Oh, it's been a blast. Like I said
Yeah.
a minute ago, they're not shy. People come to you and say, I got a great title for you. The main character is a journalist from the city who comes out to North Fork on a special assignment. And they say, well, he could go to Brazil and the book will be black like coffee. And someone said to me the other day, he could go to Wall Street. It could be green like money. So we're coming up with a whole
Sounds like
three-word leitmotif. And it's funny, I didn't have that's the other thing. I didn't have a town, and I didn't have a title till I was about almost done with the book, and it was starting to get on my nerves. I was at a party a couple of years ago, and there was a woman there who was a literary agent, and I started telling her about my book, and she wasn't interested in representing me because she was a children's book agent, but I told her the name of the title, which at that time was what I have as the overline, the North Fork Harbor Vineyard Murders. And the first thing she said was, oh, that's too long, that's too long. She said, all good titles are 3 words or less. So I started to think about it. And you've got Jaws, 1 word. You've got The Godfather, but it goes all the way back to classics like Moby Dick, Romeo and Juliet, The Scarlet Letter. So titles, I guess, successful titles for the most part are 3-4 words or less.
Look at that. So just something you happen to learn by being at a social event right there with her.
Another source of anxiety as I'm writing the story. Not only did I not know how or when I was ever going to finish the story, but then I didn't have a title for it.
Right.
So at pretty much at the 11th hour, I was talking with my family. My family was, I write at home, so I have my wife and 3 children, and I have 2 adult children and 1 6th grader. And they were all part of the project in the sense that they knew what I was doing, and they'd read pages. And my wife read the whole manuscript 3 or 4 times. I don't know how she did it, but they would offer me these unvarnished bursts of encouragement, like, finish that thing, will ya? When's this going to be finished? And I'd say, I'm writing. And they'd say, well, write faster. So little by little, I got it done. Then I just laid it out to the family. I said, look, I need a title for this thing, and it's got to be brief. And it was my 6th grade daughter, 11 at the time, said, how about red like wine?
Wow.
So 3 words, everyone liked it, easy to remember, and that sealed the deal.
Look at that. So you had pressure, you had your family write a little faster, let's get this done.
Well, they were like a coach on your team. He pressures you, but he also encourages you. And,
Sure.
They wanted to see me reach the finish line.
Well, and it's great that they helped you reach the finish line with that
Yeah,
title,
because I was
too.
driving them all crazy anyway. Right.
Great title, though, and great cover.
Thanks.
And it really, it says it all. People write books. I guess the dream from it then is a movie someday.
That's my dream.
Is that the dream?
If
Okay,
we,
I
if we,
figured that.
If we could
yeah.
transmit that to someone in Hollywood, yeah, that would be super.
So
Yeah.
when Steven Spielberg is watching our show here, maybe
Well,
he might contact
scenically
you.
though, there's so many great vistas in the North Fork, so many beautiful spots, and it really is still a relatively undiscovered part of the country. It's a very unique part of the country, and beyond the New York metro area, a relatively undiscovered part of the country.
That's right. That's right. And it is. You've raised your children, and you know the beauty and the lifestyle, the great
it's a great
lifestyle.
community, very family-oriented community.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people that they would love to write a book. They feel, and I think everybody has a book inside them. What advice can you give people if they're thinking about someday writing a book?
There's a lot of things. Make sure you have the cooperation of whoever your significant others are, because that sounds like a joke, but it's really quite serious, because it is like we said a minute ago, it's quite a commitment. If you really decide to go all the way through, it is quite a commitment. And then the next thing is, make yourself a little roadmap. Lots of times these things get started, and I've done this myself. You get that burst of inspiration, and you say, oh, that would be a terrific idea. That would be a bestseller. And you sit down and you start to write, and after you get 10, 20, 50, even 100 pages into it, which has happened to me, you run out of gas. You say, geez, this really, I really don't have anything here. And I think the reason is not so much because the plot may be poor, or the plot may be lacking. It's typically not the plot. What it is the characters. So my advice is, once you have your plot, don't think you're going to get the plot in one sitting from beginning to end. Maybe you'll get a third of it, and you probably won't have your ending. But then I would say, take a detour from that and work on your characters. It's
Character development.
I remember a long time ago reading a book by the great playwright, the great comic playwright, Neil Simon.
Sure.
And he said it's all character. He said people don't leave the theater talking about the plot as much as they talk about the characters. And it's really true. You go back and look at either pop culture or traditional literature, it's always the character. I mentioned Moby Dick, there's Ishmael. In The Godfather, it's Michael Corleone. In The Odd Couple, it's the dynamics between Felix and Oscar. It's not so much the plot, it's the dynamics, it's the character, how the character develops, how they solve a problem, how they resolve the conflict. You need a conflict, and they get to resolution. So it's really, I think a lot of good younger writers would be well served to, once they have their plot, devote a considerable amount of time to their significant characters. You need probably half a dozen significant characters in a novel, and then there'll be other ones who come up along the way as needed. And once you do that, you need to get into their background. You need a little bio on each one. What got them to where they are in that story?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you need to devote time to your setting. It's always good if you could expose the reader to a new world. In this case, we're exposing a lot of people, I hope, to North Fork.
Right, right. I like the way, too, that you start out in New York City and you develop the characters that are going to be coming out to the North Fork and how they get back together, and it works from there. And then you bring out the North Fork and the winery and the winemaker. Is there any hint that you could give us of maybe a winery that you had in mind when you were writing this? Or do you want people to come up to the street and mention, well, it's McCall or it's Raphael or one of the other 38 wineries out there?
Yeah, I did pose I did set the murder scene in the first murder scene, and actually one of the subsequent murder scenes in what would be Jamesport Vineyard.
Okay.
I'm an old friend.
I'm
I'm an old friend of the family there, and as you mentioned, I'm an amateur winemaker, and they were helpful there when I started learning about it. And their main building is a former potato barn.
It's a potato barn. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
which
where,
you mentioned very nicely in the book.
That's where some of it takes place. But I really didn't want to put any one place or person to be solely represented there. I did want to make it a little more open, deliberately to keep people guessing and sort of to spread it around all of North Fork.
Sure, sure. And it's great to keep people guessing like that. It makes it interesting. It makes them think they discovered something when they put it together.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it doesn't
Right.
work, like you said, it does. They'll come up to you and say, "Oh, I know who so and so is," and it's really not who you had in mind. But let them think that.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll help sell more wine out there too.
Sell more wine, sell more books, and provide people with hours of entertainment reading. So a few of the things that you said now for people that are looking to write a book is to get the cooperation of your family, be able to have that, because it is a commitment. It's not going to be something that you could knock off in a few weeks. It's a dedication that you're going to have. And then when they're writing, the character development is so important, to develop the characters and the actual setting of where it's going to take place. And what other advice would you give people?
Well, you know,
looking
you have to
write?
be, I think to be a good writer, you have to really develop your powers of observation, your visual powers of observation, as well as you need to develop what they call a good ear. Starting with visual, you know, every good story is there's a little bit of fantasy. So I did spend time describing a lot of nice settings. More than once I mentioned the sparkling waters of Peconic Bay or the green leafy vineyards, because you're trying to romanticize the reader a little bit. Right, exactly. You want to paint a picture. You want to cultivate a little bit of a fantasy. Gone with the Wind, you see Margaret Mitchell, she spends a lot of time talking about the vistas of the plantation. And so you want the reader to say, oh, that just sounds terrific. So that's one thing. And then you want to observe the characters themselves, you know, physically. Are they tall? Are they short? Are they slim? Are they chubby? How do they dress? How does a person who was raised in North Fork, how do they walk and talk differently from someone from New York City?
Right, right.
To this day, every once in a while, someone will say to me, "You're from the city, right?" And because I'll have done some, even though I'm here full time now, about 15 years, someone will say, "Yeah, that's just the way you said that." You know, so you have to be observant all the time, and it's more important. It's really important in the beginning to keep quiet and listen and observe than it is to talk. There's plenty of time to talk later, and then you have to listen. You know, people's inflections, how they say different words, their rhythms in their conversations, why the different things they observe, why they say certain things. We have characters in the book talking about currents and boats and navigating things like currents and wind. And then at the end, that all has to have a purpose in your story. You can't just go off on any tangent and write about something because you happen to like it or you find it interesting. It has to have a purpose. It has to contribute to the final resolution of the story.
Right. Wow. Wow. Well, it's great advice, and you know, I know people are watching this show and they're thinking, "I want that book. Where can I get it?" You know.
In that matter, I have to say the community has been very, very supportive. Bookhampton took it right on in their Mattatuck and Bridgehampton and Southampton locations. Southold Pharmacy has done well with it. Preston's in Greenport was one of the first to come on board. I think before it was even printed, they signed on, and Shelter Island Pharmacy has it. And most of the libraries have taken it. The libraries, Mattatuck Laurel, Hampton Bays, Southold Library, Greenport, they've been very, very supportive, and they've had events or will have events, reading events for me. And even the merchant community has been very supportive. They came right on board. I've gotten very, very few rejections when it comes to retailers.
Yeah. Well,
and they're pleased. It's a local book.
It's a local
unique.
book. People are looking for local products.
The local movement's exploding. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, I know your book came out in November. With the season coming up, when it's out in the summer and people are out, you're established, it's only going to get more popular.
Well, we're looking forward to a big spring. Retailers have already said, make sure, you know, you come by in the spring, and we'll probably do a lot of events. You know, it's the way
Book signings you're doing and everything.
The way the internet has changed shopping. You know, you could buy a book anywhere, but you can't. It's the same reason people come out here to buy a bottle of wine. They want the experience. They could buy wine anywhere. They could buy books anywhere, but they want to meet the author. They want to meet the winemaker, and they want to hear the story. And that's great because it develops, as they say, good word of mouth, and they take it home, and someone will say, "Oh, why'd you pick up this book?" And well, I was at North Fork, and I met the author, and it takes place in North Fork. So like you said, the local movement is exploding. It shows no signs of slowing down, and nor should it. And in a way, this is part of that.
This is great, and for people who are purchasing it, they have a signed copy. They're having an opportunity to meet you at a signing when you do it, which is great, you know. So is there a way that they could find out when you're doing a signing?
You know, I'm
Is there
on
anything
Facebook all the time. I don't have a website for the book, but I do have a Facebook
So
page
you're
for
on
the book. You can go
Facebook,
to
okay.
Red Like Wine on Facebook, and that'll list all the upcoming events.
So that's great. If you like Red Like Wine on Facebook, follow it, see where the events are going to be. If you're looking to purchase it, again, Preston's out in Greenport, Bookhampton, which has 3 or 4 locations from Mattituck all the way out to East Hampton, Southold Pharmacy, and their sister store over on Shelter Island. And if you can't get it at any of those, of course, you could still get it at Amazon. Kindle, is it on
Yes,
Kindle
it's
too?
on Kindle,
And
it's
it's on
on Nook.
Kindle. I know a lot of people, you know, I personally like a book. I like to read it, I like to touch the pages, but a lot of people use their Kindle, and it's great because every option is out there for you. You know, another thing too is you're self-published, right?
Correct.
And a lot of people who would like to write a book, they think to themselves, well, how am I going to write it? How do I get a publisher? How do I market it? There's a lot of other things to it, but I think people think if they're going to self-publish, they end up with a truckload of books in their garage.
No, the print-on-demand industry has changed self-publishing dramatically. No one saw this revolution coming. I did try to go the regular traditional publishing route, and I got rejected by about 30 times, which, believe it or not, in publishing is nothing.
That's nothing.
People
Yeah.
go well into
Yeah.
the hundreds. I think Alex Haley with Roots was rejected well over 100 times. But, and they all say that. They say, oh, this might be a bestseller, but it's not for us right now. So I came very close with a publisher. It didn't work out, and they said that even if it had worked out, it would be 18 months before you saw a book. And I know
So
in publishing time,
you were
that
able
probably means
to
24 months.
self-publish.
I self-published.
You got it there, and it's
I-
great.
I'm very happy.
You know what? And you could get the book. We're very happy that you were on the show today. Be happy, feel great. It's a great book. Get it at Preston's. Get it at Southold Pharmacy. Get it at some of the other Bookhampton locations, or if you're over on Shelter Island, at the Shelter Island Pharmacy. Thank you very much, and it's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.